I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are located on Treaty 1 territory, the ancestral lands and traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Niniwak, Athinawak, Dene Sulin, Anishinaabe, Inuit, Dakota, and Nakota peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We also acknowledge that our water is sourced from Shoal Lake 40 First Nations. So today I have the pleasure of introducing our partners, Lucy Charles and Arul Hamill. They are both pediatric occupational therapists that have over 25 years experience. And they are here today to talk about the F Words Life Wheel, bringing a biopsychosocial approach and coaching together to engage families of children with developmental needs. Now, I will let Lucy and Arul introduce themselves a bit more fully, but just to give a little bit of a background, they have been integrating the practice into their practice, which is the Maori view of New Zealand, but it covers the physical, the mental, the social, and the spiritual needs that everyone has. And this aligns so well with the WHO International Classification of Function and fits in also so perfectly with the F words created by Dr. Peter Rosenbaum. So I will turn the presentation over to you both. Thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm Arul, and Lucy's with me as well. I know that most of you don't have your faces on, your videos on, but if you would like to, just a few of you put that on, it's really nice for us to put a name to face. Thank you, Chris. Just even a few people, it's just nice rather than looking at a blank screen for us. I'm just going to start off with my pepeha, which is a little bit of my background in terms of where I'm from and what's happening. So this is what we do in New Zealand. So kia ora tato, ko mangakiki te moanga, ko rotawiti te awa, no Fiji and Auckland aho, ko Hamill toko whanau, ko Arul toko ingoa. So greetings all. The mountain and the hill that resonates for me is in Auckland, New Zealand, and it's called One Tree Hill. The river that resonates for me is Lake Roshawiti, which is in the middle of the North Island of New Zealand. I'm actually from Fiji. I grew up and was born there. My great-grandparents were from India, and but Auckland has been home for me for many, many years. So so New Zealand feels like home, but I still have a amazing affiliation with the Pacific Islands. And Hamill is my family name, and Arul is my first name. I'll let Lucy introduce herself.
Kia ora tato, ko rangitoto te moanga, ko Rakina Channel te awa, no Yorkshire and Auckland ahau, ko Charles toko whanau, ko Lucy toko ingoa. So lovely to be here, everyone. So greetings, everyone. The mountain that has a special place in my heart is Rangitoto Mountain. It's in the Karakia Gulf here. And the stretch of water just behind that is called the Rakina Channel. And so that's the special place for me when I think about the water. And I'm originally from Yorkshire. I've been in New Zealand for nearly 30 years now. So New Zealand's very much part of my home, but obviously my roots and my family are in Yorkshire. And my surname is Charles and my first name is Lucy. So welcome everyone. It's just lovely to be here and lovely to see everyone's faces and those familiar faces that we know already. So fantastic. So I'm just going to share the screen, the slides now.
So kia ora is welcome in Māori, and haere mai is saying welcome to yourselves as well, but we're basically haere mai is that you're coming and joining us on this journey today. So thank you so much for doing that. So we're just going to start with a karakia, and then I'll share a little bit about ourselves as well. So ki hora te marino, kia whakapapa punamu te moana. He haurahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, aroha ato aharoa mai, tātou ia tātou katoa. So may peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all to this day. Give love, receive love. Let us show respect for each other. So we just want to thank you for enabling us to join you today on this journey of sharing our story and our journey with you. And Lucy and I have a small little practice here in Auckland, New Zealand, of physiotherapists and occupational therapists. And we have an incredible community of practice as well, which links to the Pacific and to parts of New Zealand, but especially Auckland. So we just wanted to share sort of this term, kite. So we think about the basket. So kite means basket. We all, you know, come with so much knowledge. Everyone that's here today, you all have so much in your hands, and you bring so much to that interaction, to life with your families, to life with us. And we really want to acknowledge that and value that in terms of how we relate to others and how we connect with ourselves and the work that we do. So some of the key things that we think about in terms of the life wheel and what underpins a lot of what we're doing is acknowledging our own cultures, our beliefs, our values, our attitudes, our families, our connections, parenting for those that are parenting or for caregivers, for those that are working with others, that knowledge that you all bring to the interaction, to the way that we journey alongside each other. And also, you know, thinking about the assumptions that we have as individuals and that are based on past experience. And, you know, we weave all of this experience in life through our work together to make everyone in the, you know, in our settings feel empowered, connected, have autonomy, as well as feeling confident and competent. So these are the things that are unique to us and that drive our thinking. So we really want to acknowledge that as we weave all of this. You know, sometimes some of us are the flax in this journey. Some of us have the knife to be able to, you know, shapen and soften the flax or weave, and some of us are weaving the patterns. Some of us need clear instructions, and some of us just need the shell to decorate it. So just think of, you know, all the different things that we bring, and wherever we are on the journey, we're all weaving that together for our families and our children. I want to introduce the concept of the hauora. The hauora is a Maori philosophy of health unique to New Zealand, as Elizabeth shared with us, and it comprises of four main parts, which is the taha tinana, which is your physical well-being, which looks at the physical body, its growth, development, ability to move, and ways of caring for it. The taha hingara garo is the mental and emotional well-being, which, you know, helps us to think, acknowledge, express thoughts, feelings, and respond constructively. The taha whānau, which is our social well-being, looks at family relationships, friendships, other interpersonal relationships, feelings of belonging, compassion, and caring, and social support. And the taha wairua, which is the spiritual well-being. So we really want to think about this as the foundation from which we're going forward, the values and beliefs that determine the way that people live, the search for meaning and purpose in life, and personal identity and self-awareness. And this was also recognized by the World Health Organization. And Lucy's going to share a little bit later about some of the early research that's just happened over the summer in terms of our lovely families who have shared a little bit of their journey and the F Words Life Wheel, and have shared with us in terms of what would be great in terms of next steps. And that spiritual well-being and this foundation of culture was very much a part of that. So we just want to say that, you know, how do we connect culturally in responsive ways? And Lucy will expand on this going forward. But, you know, in New Zealand, for bicultural New Zealand, as well as our Pacific islands, because there's so many Pacific Island families that live in New Zealand, one of the things that that has really resonated with us is stories. You know, the sharing of stories and proverbs, waiatas, which are songs, pictures, the huru huru, they're all really important ways of communicating and connecting. And we are working with some of the Māori elders here to really look at how we can do that knowledge translation of the F words in particular and the life wheel in terms of our day-to-day lives, and what should that look like pictorially, what should it look like in terms of proverbs, what proverbs should we use, what songs that go with this as well. So more to come. So the F words journey, we'd just like to share a little bit of what's happening now. And Lucy and I do teach the F words life wheel. So she will share a little bit more about that journey with you. But first of all, I'm just going to start with the F words themselves and how that holds meaning for us as a community here. Thinking about cultural responsiveness and how we connect with families. Lucy and I went through a huge journey ourselves over the many years that we've been working here and with different cultures, especially in Auckland, we have a wide diversity of cultures. And we really were reflecting on how we were connecting with children and families. What was it that we were doing? What would this connection look like? How were we responding to what families were needing? And was it our agenda, or was it, or were we really, responding to the voice of children and families? And we really thought about how we could provide our children and families with a voice, and also being, responsive to the different values and beliefs and cultures that every family comes from. The extended families, there's so many, currently there's lots of beautiful families that have come to New Zealand from other countries, and they don't have that extended family. And it's really interesting to see when they've got, they've suddenly had a child or a baby who didn't quite meet the dreams that they had thought they had, and things were a little bit different, and then supporting them on that journey. What would that look like? How could we meet and match where the families were at? And how could we think about next steps for them? And how do we actually journey alongside families? So these were all questions that we continue to have actually, but things that underpin our thinking and our drive to go forwards and really champion and enable and engage with the families in our community around us. Now, I know that you're all familiar with my favorite words from Can Child that was developed based from the ICF framework. And it's, I love what Peter talks about in terms of it's a way of thinking. It's an approach, it's shifts, it widens our lens. And it's use of language that resonates for all people around us, and what this would look like in everyday life, and that then doing that knowledge translation into everyday life as well. So we started off with function in terms of the actual life wheel, and we thought, what is it that in terms of function in your lived in environment? And this looks a little bit different for every family. And so within the F words life wheel, we have function has been divided into both home and the school and the community to allow children and families to think about different roles and tasks in different settings. And we also look at what the 24-hour period may look like and feel like for a family. Things like, and also day-to-day life activities and tasks, routines, and what that actually hold, what meaning does it hold, because that's where we can actually best support our families. And one of the things was, I just remember seeing this little girl for an intensive with her mum, and she was just, I think she was 12 months at the time, 13 months. And so I was just, the mum was filling out some forms for us, and we said, how does your 24-hour day play out? What does it look like? What was happening, and how do you feel about it? And she said, 22 hours of my day is like World War II. There's only 2 hours of the day that I feel I connect with my little one. And I said, so tell me more about those 2 hours. That's huge. And she said, it's when we go out for a walk and we just sit in the park, and the rest of the time I feel like I'm just not coping. my little girl is not happy, and that's the only time. And so that's, you know, just enabled me to see where this family was at and what capacity this mum had to, you know, I could have gone in with my, you know, oh, you should be doing this for your little girl, you know, this will be great. And, you know, she needs some splints for her feet. She, you know, it'd be good if you could play with her and do such and such. But if I didn't know her journey and her story, it just would be a complete mismatch, you know, in terms of what function in day-to-day life looked like for them. So how do I match that? What is it that enables me to journey alongside her to support those next steps for her? So when we look at function at school, preschool, and the community, we think also about the role of the child and the infant or the teenager at school, the tasks they do there. What does play look like? What does playfulness look like? What are they learning? How are they managing themselves? What does participation look like? What contribution do they make? Or are they just being told what to do all the time or followed around? You know, what does it look like in their lived-in environments at certain times of the day? Participation, communication, listening, contributing, accessing the curriculum, what the families do in the community, culture, environment, and activities. And then we look at family. So your family in New Zealand, we call it whānau. And also, this also links to the ha'ora with the taha whānau, which is the social well-being. So it represents the essential environment of all children, you know, enabling the parents to have a voice, the baby and the child to have a voice, the siblings to have a voice, and thinking about the family unit, but also the extended family or the cares or their community that holds them together or supports that journey. So really thinking about all the different aspects. And in New Zealand, they call it the whakapapa, you know, carers, nannies, grandparents, siblings, cousins, all the important people in a child's life. And really thinking about the routines and the times of the day that are going well for the family and times they're not satisfied with. And I remember one family, one mum that said to me, you know, I really love my family and everything, you know, I've got these beautiful children. I feel like my husband and I together, but you know what? We have no fun. We just don't have fun. I feel like we're just on this treadmill, just doing each day, and life doesn't feel fun. It's just, I love my family, but oh my gosh, life just feels so tough. And so, yeah, those are some of the things that we try and capture in with the life wheel. Fitness refers to how children stay physically active, including exercise and other recreational opportunities, and really thinking about this physical well-being. And, you know, in this day and age, when we think about mental health as well, you know, health and fitness, having that fresh air, being able to move and run and jump in puddles, walking, swimming, you know, whatever it is that is supports us to have that growth and development physically, and how important that is for us. You know, think about our respiratory systems, everything, how that, you know, impacts on our day-to-day life. So fun includes particular activities in which children are involved or enjoy participating in, things that enable your child to laugh, smile, and interact in fun ways. You know, really think about their interests, passions, or favorite things. And these are two of the children that I work with. The one on the on my right, you can see Brianna. She lives in the Cook Islands. This family have chosen to stay back in the Cook Islands. She's got cerebral palsy, and we do our journey alongside her. And oh my goodness, they do participation and their lived-in environment so incredibly well. And it's been a huge journey for these parents. You know, they were saying to me how challenging it was just to even go out in the community in those first few years with a wheelchair, with a Mickey button, with everything else, you know, that happened. And she said, you know, people would ask, and she said that us doing that journey alongside them gave them that confidence to say, no, this is our girl. We're doing life with our girl. And there's this beautiful video that I can't share with you, but of the island dancing. They were doing a school concert, and Brianna was just a bit younger then. I think she was 4, and her dad just holding her up in her costume and dancing with her. And we all just went, wow, you know, they all had us in tears, because it was just so beautiful to see how that was what participation looked like for Brianna. Friendships, interactions, and connection. So this is taha whānau, social well-being, really thinking about the friendships, the meaningful interactions with peers, and that social development is so essential, you know, in terms of personhood. Consider what this might look like and how it can feel different in different settings, where our young ones feel confident, you know, and able to interact, and what does communication actually look like? What are those opportunities for that to happen? So really thinking about that connection and interactions with others as well. So the future, that's what child development's all about. So thinking about tomorrow, or it could be the next hour or the next week, and the next year. Often we ask families, you know, or parents, what do you worry about at night when you're lying in bed, you're going to sleep? The things that you worry about, or things that you celebrate. And often they will share just incredible insight into what they're thinking. You know, just recently I had 3 mums that said, you know, we just think our boys are going to be in jail when they're teenagers. And I'm like, oh my goodness, is that what you're worried about? Yes, because look at what they're like now. How are they ever going to do school? And they're just going to, you know, go and have fun with the wrong boys and end up in jail. I was like, oh, okay. Well, let's have a think about that. So, you know, that future, those hopes and dreams, the aspirations, the worries, the concerns, as well as all those celebrations. I love doing celebration pictures for our children. So sometimes they send us photos, and we do I just did a sheet for a little boy last week, because, you know, life has been huge for him. And we just celebrated that he could sit, you know, and listen to a story at preschool. He was able to help another little boy when this little boy was feeling sad. He was able to play by himself. And so we just had these photos, and we said, you know, this is you did this. I said, who did this? He said, me, and my clever brain and my body helped me to do it. And I'm like, that's you. And he said, I was brave, I'm kind, and I can do this, and I'm awesome. And I'm like, that is so you. Lucy, it's all yours now.
Oh, thank you, Arul. Arul shared some really lovely stories there about basically, you know, thinking about strengths and thinking about celebrations. And I think the F words has really helped us make this big shift from looking at, you know, what's wrong, and to moving to looking at what's matters, not what's the matter. So when we think about sort of moving from more a medical model, where we're sort of looking at the splints, as Arul was saying, or to thinking about more of a biopsychosocial model, what does this look like for everyday life? And the F words really helped us to focus on less on correction or fixing, and more on what's important to the child or the young person, and what's important now to the family as well. It's looking at what the child can do despite their illness. So it's much more strength-based, and looking at what they want to do in the future. It gives them hope, a chance to vision and dream of what they want to be in their life. And I remember watching the Paralympics recently, and then we knew a couple of the children who, well, young people now, who were involved in that, and just you know, seeing that journey from them, you know, perhaps participating in the Hallberg Trust at school, and then moving on to be these amazing athletes. So I think the F words really has helped us, you know, sort of help families and children really have those dreams or those envisage for the future. Oh, sorry, actually, I've just missed it. It's also, as well as that, sort of thinking about inclusion. And it's not about how a child is doing life, but it's about what they're doing and what's important to them. So I think the F words have really made this wonderful shift for us all. The other big shift that's happened in our world is the use of coaching. And when we started our journey of embedding the F words, we were really also starting to look at these coaching principles and tools in our kit, that toolbox. And it's the combination of coaching and the F words that helped us to evolve into the F words life wheel. And it's an approach we've been developing with Can Child over, I think, about the last 4 years. And as Arul said, we're always looking at things and looking at how we do things and looking how we can do things better. And we often talk about being in an occupational therapy practice, because it is, we're practicing, we're trying to get this better every day. So this slide summarizes some of the the coaching frameworks and approaches that have sort of influenced our journey. And the coaching framework really helps us to make the children and the family the agent of change, to give them that autonomy, that sense of control, and to hand back the power and the control to families. And that's what we've been really journeying along to do better and better. So this is what the F Words life wheel looks like. And it really does help us to connect with children and families. It's a very simple and powerful way to facilitate these much more meaningful conversations about what's important right now. And the use of the F Words really helps us to give a bird's eye view of what's happening for the child and young people. And we've had quite a few physiotherapists who've been involved in journeying along families with completing the F Words life wheel. And they've said, gosh, it's given me a much more perspective about what this looks like in the whole of the child's life. And often families share with us parts of their life that we can't support them with necessarily, but being able to be cognizant of what's happening in all parts of the child's life is really important to us. And it also helps us link the voice and the child and the family into the process of looking at next steps or goal setting. So it enables whoever's completing it to sort of visualize or envisage what they'd like more of. And it lets the families and the children dream. It also shifts the focus from looking at impairment to looking at participation. So what does this look like every day for children and families? And it's building capacity and empowering. So as Arul said, it's about us handing over that control and taking off our expert hats and really hearing those stories from you. So when are we using it? We're using it at lots of different stages and we're using it in lots of different ways. So initially parents would just complete this, and then parents and children, in fact children as young as 4-year-olds, I think with Arul, have been completing this in different ways, and we're going to share a few examples of that. And it's been lovely seeing some young adolescent children, or young adolescents or young people who've been able to complete it, and then their parents have been able to complete it as well. And it's been a lovely way of bringing together that perspective and hearing each other's voice. We've also had teachers who've been completing it, and we've got quite a few schools here in New Zealand who are now using it as part of their IEP process, their individual education plan. So again, it's just enabled them to not just look at what's happening at school, but looking at what's happening in the community and thinking about the future and thinking about what they do for fun and those connections, those really important connections for friends. We've used it at lots of different stages. So we as a practice use the F Words and the F Words life wheel as entry to service. So that opportunity to really find out and get to know the families and children, and to get to know the stories of the children, and to get to know what's happening and what's important. And we also have quite a few services have been using it as a triage. So often, if you've got a child with complex needs, it's often hard to sort of pinpoint who would be the best person to be involved with the child right now. But if communication is what's on top at the moment, then that might be the area that you want to focus on. So it's a way of sort of sifting through and working out what the priorities are, what the most important thing is now. And we also use it for a check-in. So we've got quite a few children who we just see maybe monthly, and it's just a lovely opportunity, as Arul said, to celebrate those successes, but also to check in and see, what's missing at the moment, or what's important right now, or what's going really, really well. And we also use it as children exit the service, again as a celebration, to celebrate all the things that they have achieved or that they are striving to work towards in the future. We use it often either face-to-face, or sometimes parents will complete it and then bring it in, and we'll go through it together. And that's quite a nice way for you to be able to complete it on your own, have that space and that time to think about what's happening in your child's life, and then to be able to come in and share it with one of the team, or to share it with your teachers, or share it relatives or you know, anyone. We're trying to move now. We've been teaching this to therapists, and we're trying to move now to helping families to own this and to make it theirs and to have it for themselves. And actually, during the pandemic, during COVID-19 and all the lockdowns we had, we actually found it worked really well online. So we just pop it up on the screen, and we can have that conversation. We type a few things as we go, or we can just have that beautiful conversation and jot down some notes and then pop it together in the wheel afterwards. And again, sometimes because it's visually presented, it's a lovely way of just summarizing what's happening and being able to sort of look at the bigger picture together. And obviously, what are we talking about? We're talking about what's important. So the wheel, obviously, we've got the F words, and then we've got the coaching framework. And it's this process that I'm going to explain a little bit more in a moment. But we're really trying to encourage everybody to see this not as a tool, not as a tick box, not let's just go through all the different areas, but as a way of sort of connecting and journeying alongside, providing that space just to have time to think about what's happening and looking at those possibilities and capacity building. So we're always encouraging everyone, don't march along with this. This is something to dance with and just explore those different areas. So this is what the wheel looks like. And obviously we've got the F words around the outside here, and we've split up function at home and school and community, just because we were finding that you know, life looks very different in different contexts for different children. So what is happening at home often, well, I see quite a few young people on the autism spectrum who are holding it together really well at school, but then after the cognitive demands of a busy day at school, you know, they're not able to hold it together at home. So home can look quite different for sometimes for children. And likewise, children might be doing really well at home, but when they're at school in that really sort of busy, complex environment with lots of demands, you know, school can be a difficult place for young people. So that's why we've split up function at home and in the community. And the process, what we do is we find out sort of where families are at and children are at. Children will rate it, or families will rate it. And supposing they rated, say, fun as a 3 and a 4, then we would ask them to tell us, what would it look like if it was a 10? You know, what would it look like if it was a bit higher? And it's just a lovely way of being able to have that conversation, to think about, you know, what the next steps would be, and what would it really look like if things were going really well. So we have, as Arul said, we've been teaching this this process for a little while now, and we have actually put together some guidelines and a booklet. So just to help probably to help the therapists more at the moment, to guide them through that process of facilitating that conversation and just respecting families and just allowing that space to be able to really express what's happening for them. So we're going through that process of looking at what's happening now, and then how we'd like it to look, exploring all those possibilities, and then actually going through the options of how to achieve those goals, and then actually coming up with an action plan. So we're just going to show a few little simple examples, just so you can see how it works. This is an example of a mum. This is capturing the voice of a mum of a beautiful little 6-year-old girl who'd recently moved to New Zealand from overseas. And she was experiencing lots of sensory difficulties around being able to change her clothes and eating, and at this stage wasn't able to go to school and wasn't able to go out at all for various reasons. So we started off talking about function at home, and mum's goal was for her to be able to put on clean underwear every day. She was really not coping with being able to change her clothes. And she'd actually been wearing the same underwear for, I think, 2 weeks. So this was obviously becoming a bit of a health issue for mum. So that was mum's biggest concern. And she wanted to be able to have at least 2 outfits that she could wear. So one that could be washed and one that she could wear. She was also struggling with showering and being able to brush her hair. And her hair got to a stage where it had such big knots, they were having to cut out big pieces of her hair. So this was mum's, you know, obviously mum's key area that she was really concerned about. She was before she went to the stage, she was going to school happily, and so that was Mum's wish. She wanted her to be able to go back to school happy and confidently, and she wanted her teachers to be able to coach her, to ask for help. So she was one of these little girls who was masking lots of her difficulties and just quietly would sit in the back of the classroom and didn't get noticed by the teacher, and so she wasn't really able to express what was happening for her at school. She loved riding her bike, but she got to the stage where she couldn't tolerate the helmet being on her head, so she wasn't able to go out for bike rides. So that was Mum's dream, for them to be able to go off as a family and go and have a bike ride together. They did lots of fun things together. She was a really creative mum, and this little girl was very creative, and they had lots of fun, but it was usually on Florence's terms. So Mum wanted her to be a little bit more flexible in the fun that they had. And this again sort of impacted on her friends. Mum said, I just don't feel like she's got any friends. So that was obviously really important for Mum. And Mum felt that she was confident that Florence would do well in the end, but she didn't want her to have these struggles in her life. She wanted her to have more fun. So they rated the different areas. So family, she rated, she valued her family. And she had these lovely connections back in the UK, but she really valued her family, but home life was obviously, and her friendships were the areas that she was really struggling with. So we really want to also be able to hear the voice of the child and the young person as well. So this is just an example. This is the same little girl. We saw her perhaps, I think maybe a month or so after we'd first met. And it was again an opportunity to celebrate some of her successes. In the home here, she talked about how she was now able to change her underwear. She had 2 pairs of pants and 2 outfits that she could wear. She'd been and had a haircut, and she was having showers twice a week. And so it was a lovely chance for her to be able to tick, tick, tick and share all the things that she'd been able to achieve. And then we sort of said, so what would make it a 10? She reckoned it was about 5 out of 10 now. And we said, what would make it a 10? She said, oh, if I could sleep all night in my bed on my own, but there are bed bugs in my bed. So that was the next step. And it was nice to be able to hear her voice about what the next steps were. And then when we started to talk about friends, she'd made these lovely new friends, and she drew them here for me. And family, obviously she was still really happy about her family, and they'd got a new cat. And so family life was wonderful. And at school, she had a school counselor who was supporting her, but she'd found a way with her teacher to be able to express how she was feeling. She had a little dial, 0 to 10. And when it came to cross country, for example, she could say, I'm a 1 for this, I'm really not happy about doing this. And so she was able to ask for help now at school. And the next stage for her was, they were still having lots of fun, but they weren't going out very often. She was going to school, but, she wanted to be able to go out into the community. She wanted to go to McDonald's and get some chips. She wanted to be able to go to this little cafe, a cat cafe, and she wanted to be able to have some friends over for a sleepover. So it was just lovely to be able to capture her voice and what was happening for her. And here's another quick example. I just, when I was going through the slides, I just found this one. And this is an example of a little girl who friends were really important to her. When I asked her about what was most important, she drew this picture, and I'm like, what is that? And it was the computer. And she said, we've been on Zoom for so long, and it's a million times better now that we're back at school. So, children can share things with us absolutely beautifully. So I'm going to just let Arul share this little example of Molly, who was in one of the pictures. So Arul, can I hand over to you for this one?
Oh, yes. So Molly is now 12 years old. She's got hemiplegia, and so during one of our lockdowns here, we did a joint session with Mum and her on Zoom, just to look at all the different aspects of what was happening for her. And Molly was able to give her value of where she thought things were at and where Mum thought things were at. So that's hence why there's 2 circles there. And Molly was able to question her mum about some of her mum's scoring as well, to say, hey, Mum, how come you thought that? Because I thought I was doing really well at such and such. And one of the things that came out of that was the discussion of like, and so that Mum could share what she was thinking and Molly could share what she was thinking as well. So actually it was quite valuable. And Mum was like, one of the things that Mum had decided was that she would like Molly to be able to use a knife and fork and put her sweatshirt on herself. And so Molly came back and said, oh, well, actually, I don't really think that's important. I want to be doing knitting. I want to be able to knit, and I want to be able to do lots of baking. And Mum was like, oh, okay, so there's some differences here. So anyway, we talked a little bit about the sweatshirts, and actually a couple of weeks later, I checked in with them and Molly said, well, actually, Mum and I have been discussing if I go to the shops with my friends, I should be able to take my top on and off. And if I want to try new clothes on, then I need to be able to take my sweatshirt on and off by myself. And so, yes, Arul, I do want to learn about that. And I really want to know about how to bake and look at recipes and different things. And I suppose I need to use the spoon when I'm doing that, or being able to cut. So actually we did quite a few baking sessions on Zoom, knitting, and Grandma came and joined us with the knitting session. And so there was a photo right at the beginning in terms of function, and there's Molly working out how to do some knitting together. And then subsequently they came for a physiotherapy review, and the physiotherapist went through a piece of paper and looked at all the different aspects of what was happening for her. And you can see at the bottom, we've also sometimes used, especially for the younger children, I use like a smiley face or a thinking face in the middle. The smiley face is 10, everything's going well, and all the middle bit is like that we're thinking about it, or we're working towards it, or this is where we're at. And the number 1 is more of a sad face, where things are like quite tricky, and that's where we're stuck at the moment. And so she was able to share with the physio where she was at physically and what she wanted to do. She had a hemiplegia and what sports she was working on, and they unpacked it into smaller parts with her. So that was a different way of looking at it. This one here was 11-month-old. The pediatrician had referred this little mum and baby to me in terms of connection. She was one of a twin. And so basically Mum just went through it and shared what her journey was and her story. So I was able to just fill it in for her as she was talking. I had her permission to do that. And I said, can I just write notes and fill this in? Because this is your story. And then I just sent it off to her afterwards. And she was just able to share what was happening for them. And the following week, she said, actually, we're doing better. And then about 3 weeks later, she said, actually, we're not doing very well. And we're finally getting some help through the infant and maternal mental health team in terms of herself as a mum. And I actually had a pocket call from her last year. The little girl's now 3, and she said, I just wanted to let you know, she said that we're doing really well, and thank you, for being there at the beginning and for just listening to me and hearing where we were at.
This is another example. Arul's just shared the lovely example of Molly, where Mum was able to rate it, and her daughter Molly was able to rate the wheel together. And this is another example of a mum who came to see me, and we were doing some coaching sessions together. And she said, I'm just not sure what my daughter knows about this. They were having difficulties in the evenings. This young lady was not going to bed till about 1 or 2 in the morning, and was waking up Mum every night. And she was trying to problem solve how she can enable her to do that. But it wasn't until we got the 2 of them together, and this young lady was able to express what was happening for her. And she had no idea that she was waking up her mum every night. And so it was just really a lovely example of just being able to hear each other's perspective. And so that's the wheel's been working really well from that perspective, to be able to hear each other's voice. So as Arul said, we've been involved with Auckland University, and there's some research going on around looking at how the F words resonate for our families, our Indigenous families, and in terms of that connection. And we haven't got the results of that research yet, and it's still in its initial stage, but there have been some beautiful feedback from the families that we have connected with. And in New Zealand, we do have this commitment. There's a treaty called the Treaty of Waitangi, and there's a commitment to reducing these inequalities of our Indigenous people. And as Arul shared, we've got lots of different families from different cultures from the Pacific Islands. And so really we've been trying to think about how we can be culturally responsive. And these 4 themes that have really come out of the research. So again, that whole concept of hōora, which I'll just cover in a moment, but also thinking about that connection. So there's a beautiful word in Te Reo, whakananakotanga, which is about connection, which is about connecting through sameness. So sharing a little bit about ourselves as well, in order to have this relationship that's not hierarchical. And ako is about providing space. And ako is a concept of a circle. And in Maori meeting houses, there is never the speaker at the front and the rest of the audience behind. They always meet in a circle. And again, that's a symbol of providing a voice on an equal platform. So we really love this concept of ako and providing space and time for families. And rangatiratanga is about self-determination. So as Arul mentioned, it's about allowing you, the families and children, to have a voice, to have that autonomy, to be able to decide what is worked on in therapy, for example, and to decide what is important to you and have that sense of control. And also relatedness, so really being able to relate to individual situations and what's important. And again, and also giving that sense of competence. So really hearing and validating the amazing work that so many families are doing with their children. And the other concept is manakitanga, which is about respect and generosity and compassion. And aroha is love. So working alongside families with compassion and allowing that autonomy. So, sorry, we've been working with some beautiful Maori families here in New Zealand, and we've had some lovely elders. I know you have Elder Mary, who's an absolutely wonderful resource for your community. And it was lovely. I just had a quick look at when I was waiting to come on at your website, and it's so lovely to see that section on your website about stories and sharing stories. In Maori culture, stories and proverbs, whakatoki, are really important. Also, so are songs, which we call waiata, and pictures, huruhuru. So we are working with some kaumautua here in New Zealand to look at how we can present the F words differently. And there's been some work done in India. It was on one of the slides actually that Arul shared, and they've redone the wheel, the F words, and presented it in a way that resonates more for the Indian families. So we're working on that in New Zealand. And out of the research came that the F words was a really lovely way of having a common language for families. And but also it wasn't as explicit about certain parts, so that spirituality was not as explicit, and looking at those beliefs and those core values. So that's another thing that we're trying to work on and develop. And in Maori culture, the sun is a really important, so we started talking about the hub of the wheel, and then one of our lovely kaumautua said, well, it looks a bit like the sun. So again, we're just looking at ways of bringing in that whenua, that importance of that connection to the land in some of the work that we're doing. So Arul, we're sort of running out of a little bit of time. Would you like to just share just quickly about some of the work we're doing in the Pacific?
Yes, so some of the things that we're just looking at the moment is the Cook Islands and Niue in particular, to look at how, what the F words mean, and that connection piece, what would the wheel mean for different communities. So we're connecting with different groups, and we're about to connect with Niue as an island with their elders and their community, and they're just at the start of their journey. So we love that all the work that you've shared with us in terms of what you're doing, and it's just supporting us to link with all the children and families and really thinking about participation in the Pacific. And one of the things that Lucy and I noted when we went over as a team, I've got a long-standing connection with the Pacific, was participation and family, and how regulated all the children were. Who were just like, wow, there's no dysregulation here. They're just all doing life. And it was just so incredible for us to reflect and unpack together, to think about, you know, what was underpinning that? What were the values and the cultural beliefs and the way that they interacted and connected. And it was just so different to what it looks like in life in Auckland here. So I'm going to share a proverb with you, because I feel like we are all joined in this together. So, ihara takutoa, I te toa takitahi, engari he toa takitini. My success is not mine alone, it is the success of the collective. I'm going to just share a video with you from Oscar's mum, and she's just going to share her story with you.
Sorry.
So the F words, the life wheel, has just been really fantastic, because as a parent of a child with special needs, you get a lot of information thrown at you. There's a lot of terminology that you have to come up to speed with and try and remember where your child is at. And I found the F words just so simplistic, but had meaning. And then it was easily to transfer that to looking at Oscar's life and how he's going. And so, you know, when you're dealing with a child with special needs, you know, you have your good days and you have your bad days. And what I liked about the F wheel is it anchors you, and it gives you an anchor, but it's also giving you a picture of him, of your child in the future, because it's goal setting. And so I think one of the things I've loved about it was that you're always kind of going, we're doing this for our future. We're doing this for a particular goal in mind. And that actually helps you get through the hard days. And then the other thing, you know, there's just so much good in this that I like, is because it covers fun and it covers family and it covers friends. You realize that your whole life with your child is actually propelling him to the future that you want. And so you don't have to think, oh, I need to be structured and I need to do this and this. You're understanding that being with family, being with friends and having fun actually is helping him grow and develop in the ways that he should. And for me, I'm terrible with words and terminology and I forget lots of things. But with the F words, it is so simple that you can actually retain it. And then it gives you the ability to go to kindies into the school and explain what you're looking at, because you can kind of rattle off quite easily, you know, the function, the friends, the fitness, the future, etc. So it makes it quite easy to explain it to other parties who have no background or knowledge of it, as opposed to trying to explain complex ideas and complex, you know, terminologies for certain aspects of his life. So for me, being able to go, and in my mind, when I look at Oscar, kind of just quite simplistically getting a holistic picture of what he's doing and where he's at is quite easy and transferable. Particularly like with the goal setting and just kind of going, where are we at? And in this day that fitness-wise was actually not great, but function-wise, we were actually achieving goals, and family-wise, this has actually given him a good day. So it gives you quite an even, balanced look and approach at looking at where Oscar is going in his life.
As we finish off today, I'd just like to share this analogy that we use for ourselves, and it's come out of some of the occupational therapy frameworks as well. Picture the family as a flowing river with all that a river brings. Imagine how we can join in their journey at different times. The family have their rhythm, and sometimes there are interruptions, and other times there are rocks or barriers, and we walk alongside to help build a bridge, guide flow, and offer encouragement in their journey. And we're doing that all, you know, everyone's doing that. Family members are doing that. We're doing that. Well, we try anyway, try our best. But one of our dreams and hopes is that this life wheel and the F words will belong to families, not to us, but that families will take ownership of this, and parents, and hold this, and children, and it is their voice, and enables them to share their journey, their stories with everyone else, and for Lucy and I not to hold this for ourselves. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.